behind the bars of the heart. The fluorescent lights of Cell Block D hummed their monotonous song as Officer Maya Rodriguez completed her rounds at exactly 11:47 p.m., just as she had done every night for the past 3 years. But tonight her hand trembled slightly as she passed Cell 23, where Sophia Chen sat cross-legged on her bunk, pretending to read a worn paperback she had already memorized. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, a moment so brief it could have been nothing, yet so charged it felt like the air itself might ignite. Maya forced herself to keep walking, her boots echoing against the concrete floor, while her heart hammered a rhythm of longing and fear that had become as familiar as her own breathing. It had started 6 months ago, on an ordinary Tuesday that had transformed into something extraordinary. Sophia had been transferred to the women's correctional facility after taking the fall for her abusive ex-boyfriend's crimes, a victim of love twisted into loyalty that had cost her 3 years of freedom. Maya had processed her intake, stamping forms and recording details with the mechanical efficiency of someone who had seen too many broken souls pass through these gates. But when Sophia had looked up at her during the fingerprinting, something in those dark, intelligent eyes had reached past all of Maya's carefully constructed walls. There was no manipulation there, no hardness born of survival in the system, just a profound sadness mixed with a stubborn spark of dignity that refused to be extinguished. Maya had tried to ignore the pull she felt. She had built her entire career on discipline, on following the rules that kept order in a place where chaos constantly threatened to erupt. She had grown up in a family of law enforcement officers, where duty was sacred and personal feelings were weaknesses to be overcome. Her father had been a police captain, her mother a corrections officer, and Maya had learned early that strength meant suppressing the parts of herself that didn't fit the mold. She had never told her family about the relationships she had quietly pursued with women, brief connections that never went anywhere because she had never allowed anyone close enough to truly see her. The uniform was her armor, the badge her identity, and for years it had been enough. But Sophia had changed everything without even trying. It began with small moments that Maya told herself meant nothing. A concerned glance when she noticed Sophia sitting alone in the cafeteria, isolated by other inmates who sensed she didn't belong in their world. A quietly exchanged book recommendation when Maya found Sophia in the prison library, her refuge from the harsh reality of incarceration. Brief conversations during yard time that never crossed professional boundaries but lingered in Maya's mind for hours afterward. Sophia spoke about her life before, about teaching art to underprivileged children, about the dreams she had surrendered when she made the choice to protect someone who had never protected her. She never made excuses for her situation, never played the victim, and that quiet strength drew Maya in deeper with each passing day. The turning point came during a violent incident in the common area. A fight had broken out between rival groups, and in the chaos Sophia had been knocked to the ground, vulnerable to being trampled or worse. Maya had acted on instinct, covering Sophia's body with her own, shielding her from the violence swirling around them. For those few seconds before backup arrived, Maya felt Sophia's rapid heartbeat against her chest, smelled the standard issue soap in her hair, and knew with absolute certainty that this was no longer just compassion or professional concern. When their eyes met in the aftermath, both of them bruised and shaken, something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of a connection that terrified them both. After that night, they began to steal moments that existed in the gray spaces of the prison routine. Maya would linger during cell checks, and they would talk in hushed whispers about everything and nothing. Sophia would wait in the library during Maya's evening rounds, and they would sit on opposite sides of the table, their fingers sometimes brushing as they reached for the same book, electric shocks disguised as accidents. They never touched more than necessary, never said the words that burned in both their hearts, but the feelings between them grew like wildflowers through concrete, beautiful and impossible and utterly unstoppable. Maya knew the risks. Relationships between officers and inmates were strictly forbidden, grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal charges. More than that, the power dynamic made any such relationship ethically problematic in ways that kept Maya awake at night, questioning her own integrity. She told herself 100 times to request a transfer, to put distance between herself and this impossible situation. But every time she saw Sophia's face light up when she entered the cell block, every time she witnessed Sophia's quiet courage in facing each day of her sentence, Maya's resolve crumbled. She had spent her entire life being strong, being dutiful, being the person everyone expected her to be. For the first time, her heart was asking her to be someone else entirely. The weight of their secret grew heavier as the months passed. Maya began making mistakes at work, her focus scattered by thoughts of Sophia, when she should have been alert to potential dangers. Other officers noticed her distraction, made comments about her spending too much time in certain areas of the facility. Maya knew she was playing with fire, risking everything she had worked for, but she couldn't stop. Sophia had become the first person who truly saw her, not as Officer Rodriguez or as the daughter trying to live up to impossible expectations, but as Maya, flawed and scared and desperately in love with someone she could never have. The crisis came when Sophia's appeal was unexpectedly granted. New evidence had emerged proving her ex-boyfriend had coerced her testimony, and her lawyer believed she would be released within weeks. The news should have brought joy, but instead it brought a different kind of anguish. Maya realized that once Sophia walked out those gates, any relationship between them would still be tainted by how it had begun, by the power imbalance that had existed when they first met. Other officers would assume the worst, that Maya had abused her position, that Sophia had manipulated her way to preferential treatment. The truth was more complicated and more painful. They had fallen in love in a place where love was forbidden, and now they faced losing each other just as freedom became possible. The night before Sophia's release hearing, Maya broke protocol for the first time. She requested a private meeting under the guise of processing exit paperwork. In the small interview room, with the camera deliberately turned away, they finally allowed themselves to be honest. Sophia spoke first, her voice trembling with emotion she had kept locked away for so long. She talked about how Maya had saved her in ways that went beyond that violent day in the common area, how knowing someone truly saw her had kept her from losing herself entirely in this place. She acknowledged the impossibility of their situation, the careers and reputations that would be destroyed if anyone knew the truth. Maya listened with tears streaming down her face, all her professional composure finally shattered. She admitted that Sophia had awakened parts of herself she had spent years suppressing, that for the first time in her life she understood what it meant to love someone so completely that everything else became secondary. But she also acknowledged the painful reality that pursuing this love meant sacrificing everything they both valued about themselves. Maya's career had been her identity for so long, and Sophia deserved a fresh start unburdened by scandal and judgment. They made the hardest decision of their lives that night. Sophia would walk free, and Maya would request a transfer to another facility. They would not contact each other, would not try to build something in the outside world. Their love would remain what it had always been, a secret flower blooming in the darkest place, beautiful precisely because it was impossible. They allowed themselves one moment of what could have been, their hands clasped across the table, their foreheads touching, breathing the same air as tears fell onto the cold metal surface between them. The morning of Sophia's release, Maya stood in the prison yard and watched her walk toward the gates. Sophia turned back once, their eyes meeting across the distance, and Maya saw everything she was giving up reflected in that gaze. Then Sophia was gone, swallowed by the world beyond the walls, and Maya was left with only memories of whispered conversations and stolen glances and a love that had transformed them both in ways they were still trying to understand. 3 months later, Maya received an unmarked envelope at her new assignment across the state. Inside was a watercolor painting of wildflowers growing through concrete, and on the back, in Sophia's handwriting, were just 4 words: "Some things bloom anyway." Maya hung it in her apartment where she could see it every morning, a reminder that love doesn't always look the way we expect, that sometimes the most profound connections happen in the most impossible circumstances, and that sacrifice and duty can coexist with the deepest feelings of the heart. If this story has touched something inside you, if you believe in love's power to transform us even in our darkest moments, I would be honored if you would take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that authentic connection can happen anywhere, even in the most unlikely places. Your support helps stories like these reach people who need them most. Maya never forgot the woman who had changed her forever, and Sophia carried forward the strength she had found in being truly seen. They had each other for only a brief season, but that season had planted seeds that would bloom for the rest of their lives, teaching them that love isn't always about possession or happy endings, but sometimes about becoming better versions of ourselves through the simple act of being known. Before we close this story, I invite you to share in the comments below. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between love and duty? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Their story ended where it began, behind walls that separated them, but the love they shared had freed them both in ways that no gator guard could ever contain. Sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that teach us not about holding on, but about letting go and finding that what we released continues to live within us, changing who we are forever.